Wesley, today we've got a lot planned. So, first off, we got our normal subject. We're talking about Hunger Games today. Then after that, we've got a brand new segment for everyone.
We've been trying to come up with these for a while.
Yeah, which we have actually got a bunch in the works that we have not had a chance to do yet, or maybe we've just been too lazy to. But today, we're proud to introduce you to Trailcast Trivia. So we'll go into some trivia immediately after talking about the Hunger Games. And actually, the trivia is about the Hunger Games. So stay tuned for that. And then after that, normal What's New With You. Or at this point, it's really just, hey, Ahsoka.
That's a really bad name for a segment. Hey, Ahsoka.
I mean,
It
sure.
might not actually be that bad, but, anyways.
But, yeah, so we actually postponed our scheduling date so we could talk about Ahsoka up to date. So today we will be covering Ahsoka episodes 5 and 6. So stay tuned for that as well.
Only if you're into Star Wars, Anyways, let's get on to the rest of the podcast.
The Hunger Games is the first book in Suzanne Collins' dystopian trilogy. It's set in the future world known as Panem, where a totalitarian capital rules over 12 impoverished districts. To maintain control and quell rebellion, the capital annually hosts the Hunger Games, a televised event in which one boy and one girl, known as tributes from each district, are chosen to fight to the death in a massive arena.
The story follows Katniss Everdeen, a resourceful and skillful archer who volunteers as a tribute to replace her younger sister Prim when Prim's name is drawn from the lottery. Katniss is joined by Peter Millark, a male tribute from District 12, as they are whisked away to the capital. There, they must navigate the brutal and deadly games while forming alliances, facing the harsh environment, and contending with the cunning and dangerous tributes from the other districts.
All right. I hope that wasn't
as hard as I thought it'd be.
Yeah, I hope that wasn't too rehearsed for y'all. Just thought it might be interesting to kind of give just a brief synopsis of, the Hunger Games, what we're talking about today. So, Wesley, I know.
On that point, for anyone who did feel like that was extremely rehearsed, know that it was not. We just read this. I'm a horrible reader, so that actually worked out very well. I'm very surprised.
It was scripted, but it wasn't rehearsed.
Exactly. That was go one.
Yeah.
Go one. Take one. Anyways, what was your question?
So, obviously, we're talking about the first Hunger Games. So, what do you, or not the first Hunger Games, the first book / movie, but what do you think of the Hunger Games?
I really like the movie. I mean, it's a good movie. It's an interesting concept for a movie. Obviously, it was first the book, but it's an interesting concept for a storyline. Jennifer Lawrence does an amazing job playing Katniss. Honestly, all the casting is really good in this. I have no problem with any of the casting in it. I think each person is portrayed very well. I like the overarching story of the Hunger Games. We'll get into more of the story of the later ones at a later time. But this one probably sticks out the most in my mind because it's the first one I've seen the most. But it is also a little bit of a sad, It's kind of sad because you think about it, you got kids over here. We'll talk about it a little bit. The death of Rue, that is a heart-wrenching scene. It is just sad because this little girl who has no business being in this place or should ever have to deal with anything like this is, losing her life at probably about 12 years old. So it is kind of a sad concept, but it's a good movie. It's a good take. And while this one doesn't really end on the heroes win at the end of this. The end of the games, the two people we've been following throughout the whole entire movie survive. They win the games, and that's the end of it. But the repercussions of this one, which we'll fall more into in the next Catching Fire and then in the Mockingjay Part 1 and Part 2, are much more hopeful because the rebellion starts up again and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But this one just ends with, I mean, it just kind of ends. So it
Mm-hmm.
does leave a sense of like emptiness, and you're like, I need more, which is kind of good when you're trying to start a trilogy. Not a trilogy. Well, it should have been a trilogy, but it's good when you're trying to start a franchise.
Mm-hmm.
You want to leave each movie with start wanting more, but it also is like it still is conclusive because what's the whole entire point of the movie? They're taken to the Hunger Games. What happens at the end of the movie? They win the Hunger Games. So it is conclusive, but it also leaves you wanting more. So I feel like that's a good
Mm-hmm.
aspect of it.
Yeah, and on that note, in my mind, I think of it as a trilogy, even though most of the time I think of the movies, which it's a quad quadrilogy.
I guess. I don't even know if I've seen the fourth one before. Honestly, I don't know if I know the events of it. I don't know if
Well,
I've
we're
seen it
talking
though.
about it in November, so
I'll watch it then at least,
yeah.
and I'll see if I've seen it. I know I've watched the first part, but I think when did Mockingjay Part 2 come out? That's something that I will find out at a later date, or maybe while we're talking. But I may have not seen it because I know I've seen Mockingjay Part 1, but Mockingjay Part 2 might not be something that I've seen. It might have come out and I just kind of forgot about Hunger Games.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways,
But anyway, one thing I should mention is that we're going to be talking about all four in preparation for Battle of Songbirds and Snakes, which comes out in November as well. So yeah, stay tuned for that. Um, but uh, I just lost my train of thought.
you had a train of thought to begin with.
Well,
Choo choo.
I have a train track. I don't know if I have a train. What?
We need to get a choo choo sound effect.
Oh gosh.
Choo choo. David, I need a choo choo sound effect.
I already given
So
you.
Maki,
I've already given you your favorite one, but
I'm not gonna play it right now. Well, I guess it actually could work. David lost his train of thought.
Oh no, the car exploded!
So the car exploded in David's head. It's the train car exploded. I do want to mention though that Mockingjay Part 2 I looked up came out in 2015. I don't think I've seen that. But anyways, moving on back to the one that we're talking about today, Mockingjay. Hunger Games. Let's start talking more about that.
Hunger Games, which this one came out in 2012. Which think about this, that was 11 years ago.
It's crazy. What's kind of crazy though, and the one thing that I heard about this though is so Jennifer Lawrence apparently was 20 when she started shooting this and turned 21 during shooting of it, like she celebrated her 21st birthday on set. Think about that because she was not a no-name star at this point in time. She had already done some of the X-Men stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't think I realized just how young she was when she was doing some of the X-Men.
Yeah, because wait, her first one was First Class. When did First Class come out?
For the fact that we came a lot more prepared than we normally do, we really came a lot less prepared than we thought.
First Class just came out in 2011, so she probably would have been
1962.
Like
1962. No. That's what it says right here. It says X-Men First Class is primarily in 1962. So it probably bridged a little bit into 1963, with filming and shooting, but
that would have made her what, like negative 30 or something?
No, that would just make her not 20 whenever she was shooting. That would make her, let's see, what's 12? So 70 to 62 to 70. Well, she had at least be like, let's say about, we'll give it an even 20 in 1962. So she's 20 in 1962. She's 30 in 1972. She's 40 in 1982. 50 in 19. She is a mutant after all. 40. Where am I at? 40 in 1982, 1950, 1992, 02 when we were born. She would be 60, but she still looks great because she's a mutant. And then 70 in 2012 when she switches over and does some other roles. David, I think I need some audio. And maybe I need to make this, but you're kind of the audio person that deals with all this stuff. I need audio of like for me to basically let people know that I'm about to do math. Because I've done this multiple times.
Then
Like
we'll
math.
introduce everyone and you to a new segment called Wesley Explains. What is going on?
I need this is Wesley. This is math class with Wesley. But everyone's failing because my math is probably wrong and everyone has to listen to me. So, anyways, do you care to interject at the important time? You're kind of just looking there like you're an idiot.
I'm just waiting for you to finish.
Oh, I'm done. I said she'd be 70 in 2012. So that's all that I was.
But
He's
you
not
just
negative.
Said she was 20 and turned 21 during filming.
Well, that's what I heard. But I don't know what the truth is in all this.
Anyway.
Well, the real question is, David, that we need to ask you, because you asked me about my thoughts on it. But what are your thoughts on the Hunger Games? Like, how do you feel about the movie?
Let's actually bring it back to the Hunger Games.
Well, that's what I'm trying to do here, and you're just interrupting and then just laughing. You got to compose yourself, David. You got to be composed. So tell me, what are your thoughts on the Hunger Games? The single movie, not the whole franchise.
I mean, yeah, like generally, like when I think of the franchise, I think of this movie just because. Actually, I think I've seen it more times than I've seen the other two, or other three. Again, like I said, I think of it as a trilogy, even though it's 4 movies. But also one thing with this too is it also kind of reminds me of Pirates of the Caribbean, where it's like the first one is self-contained, but then the second one leads directly into the third one, and well, in this case, the third one leads directly into the fourth one. But you could technically watch the. I mean, yes, it does leave it open, and yes, they won the Hunger Games, but there's still this whole totalitarian government in place. But you could still.
You said that's a bad thing.
But you could still watch the first one, and it could be a self-contained movie, or read the book, and it could be a self-contained book, because it does leave it open for more. But it doesn't need more to complete the story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and even like you had mentioned with Pirates of the Caribbean, like the second one picks up in either a place that the first one, like, for Pirates of the Caribbean at least, the first one hinted at possibly, or in the case of Hunger Games, the second one picks up like right after the events of the first one. It starts with the parades of them after they won the Hunger Games. Mm-hmm. All the aftermath of them winning the Hunger Games.
Which we don't need to get too much into that. Oh
yeah, spoiler warning, they win.
No, really?
I mean, it would have been a pretty bad series, but I mean, we could also we could completely turn and follow Haymitch. It could be where they died, and then all of a sudden Haymitch wants revenge for some reason. I don't think it fits his character. But then, hey, you saw what happened to District 11 when Rue died. So, Haymitch could get very attached.
Wait, so let's kind of get into that. So, Pan Am is divided up into 12, well, technically 13 districts plus the capital. And it's a dystopian future. It's supposed to be the modern day United States.
Mm-hmm.
Which, well, District 11 is modern day Canada. It's part of modern day Canada.
It's in North America.
Yeah, but it's North America. Except instead of divided into 48 states, it's divided into 12 districts plus the capital. Which the capital I think is supposed to be Denver, because it's in the books it mentions the Mile High City. So I think it's supposed to be Denver.
From what I've heard, I don't know how explicitly stated it is, but I think it's believed that there's some kind of a nuclear fallout or something like that, because it's believed that this is the only inhabitable space. There's not really anything in the rest of the world. This is the world at this point in time. So, and I don't think it's. I mean, it's not extremely important to the story.
No,
you don't need to know the history of Pan Am to know the history of the Hunger Games. They go into that aspect of it, and that's all you really need to know about this. So, and for any deep Hunger Game fan who knows all the history and is like, "What an idiot! Stop talking about my beloved franchise." I apologize, and let us know the history of Pan Am, please, because I don't know,
But
and I won't do the research either.
but like, okay, so 74 years before, or actually it would have been more than that, but before this movie takes place, the districts had rebelled against the capital, and that's why the capital instituted the Hunger Games, was to essentially punish the districts.
hmm
But you can still see, like, like the capital likes to pretend that everything's all hunky dory, and all the districts love the capital and stuff. But that's obviously not the case. Like, we see that in district. In the beginning of the movie, we see in District 12, like, they're living in poverty.
hmm
Even like what we mentioned in the recap, even the quote unquote good side of town, the good area, like the rich areas of District 12, are like dirt poor.
hmm
So, and that's true for most of the districts. Now, the lower number districts, like District 1, 2, 3, that are closer to the capital, have more loyalty to the capital, are essentially rewarded for their loyalty.
hmm
But
Yeah.
the further out you get from the capital, the poorer and the more the less loyal to the capital your loyalty to the capital you get. And like you mentioned a minute ago, after Rue dies, we see that the riot that breaks out in District 11. I mean, rightfully so, but you know.
hmm Yeah. Do we want to dive into a little bit of the backstory of District 13? That won't be really brought up too much until some of the later movies, but
Yeah,
we do need
it's
to
not
also
it's
mention why there's not a District 13.
yeah, it's not really mentioned in until like Mockingjay. But yeah, if you want to dive into that and kind of explain that.
Okay. So, it is said in the Hunger Games, this movie, that District 13 was completely destroyed. Well, that's not true. We find out about that a little bit later down the road. And David said Mockingjay. I would assume that's probably one of the. I think that would be right, because I think at the end of Catching Fire, we'll dive into that later. Anyways, it's somewhat's coming back to me. But anyways, so actually, what happened was, apparently, unbeknownst to most people, District 13 was kind of a nuclear research facility of sorts. So essentially, the gist of it is District 13 had a bunch of nukes, and the capital was, doing their thing. And District 13 was like, leave us alone or we'll blow you up. And the capital said, okay, we can come to an agreement here. We will leave y'all alone. Y'all will leave us alone.
Mm-hmm.
But we want to make sure that nobody knows that you're here. Which I don't really know why District 13 would agree to that. One, they have nukes. Just blow them up anyways. Who cares? Just win the war. Like, aren't you with the other districts? But anyways, that's beside the point. Essentially, District 13 goes into hiding underneath, and underground, and everyone believes that District 13 was completely wiped out. So that's why there's some brief mentioning. There's not much mentioned about District 13. It's more just a passing thing. But it is mentioned in this movie that District 13 was wiped out when the rebellion happened. But they're actually thriving underground, and they are the kind of the catalyst, not the catalyst, but they're kind of like the main spot when the rebellion starts. That's where Katniss goes and Haymitch goes, and they all go there. That's kind of where the rebellion more or less starts. Cat.
Well, okay, so District 13 essentially seceded from Pan Am.
Nukes.
Yeah, and they use nukes as their leverage. And so that's why there's no. And then obviously the capital lied about it, because the capital lies about everything.
But they didn't want people knowing that kind of power was out there. So,
or that a district could get away with seceding.
Yeah. So they wanted to make it look like it was destruction, total wiping off the face of the earth kind of a thing. And that's where everyone is at this point in time. They think it's just destroyed.
Mm-hmm. So,
So,
yeah, so jumping back to the actual, like, first Hunger Games, I was thinking it's interesting that, like, each district also has its own, like, uh, industry. Like,
mm,
like, obviously, like, the further out districts, like District 10, 11, 12, are more like raw material, or like, collecting raw materials, like District 12 is the coal mining district.
mm-hmm.
And then as you get further towards the capital, like I said, that wealth kind of radiates from the capital out, and the lower number districts are the ones that are right there at the capital, like 1, 2, 3. Those are the ones where all the manufacturing is.
Mm-hmm. Apparently, and you might be able to help me with remembering this if you've looked into it or know more about this. I don't remember which one it is. I think it's either 10 or 11, but they deal with like the meat basically for the capital.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently they are like, I mean, they're not the poorest. District 12 is the poorest. But they are like one of the poorest, but they make the capital the richest. Or maybe not specifically, but they really bring in they're like really really important to the capital because it's food and it's meat, you know. Um and so those are two very valuable things. And it's really valuable to the capital, but they're just like they get
Okay, so
nothing
here we
out
go.
of it.
Here we go. So District 1 is luxury items. District 2 is masonry and defense. District 3 is general electronics. District 4 is fishing. District 5 is power and electricity. District 6 is transportation. District 7 is lumber. District 8 is textiles. District 9 is grain. District 10 is livestock. District 11 is agriculture. And District 12 is, of course, coal mining.
Okay.
So, but as you can see, like the closer you get to the capital, like the more like industrialized and the less like break back or back breaking work people have to do. Like District 1 is literally just luxury items.
Mm-hmm. That is one thing to mention though, because you said District 2 is like masonry and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
The one, all the guards are trained in District 2.
Well,
so
it's
that's where
masonry
they
and
go.
Defense.
Yeah, but that's where like all the guards and all the basically police force and all they go there to train. And then they're sent out to all their other districts. But that's why for another reason that when you look at your careers, usually they're from like districts 1, 2, and maybe 3. I think it's usually 1 or 2, but it's because they have access to weapons. Specifically, District 2, they have access to weapons, whereas most other districts don't. Specifically, traditional weapons. I mean, you can make anything a weapon, but if you work in the industry or work in a place where you make weapons, you have a lot more access to them than most people would.
Mm-hmm.
And if the capital trusts you more so, you're given a little bit more leeway. So, but anyways.
Oh, and that's why like the main kind of like antagonist in the actual like or the tribute who's the main antagonist in this movie is Fennec, who's the male tribute from District 2.
Fennec?
Wait.
Cato.
Right.
Fennec's from the next book movie.
Right, that's right.
He's from District 4.
Yeah. I don't know why I thought of it. Yeah, Cato. Anyway, yeah.
You said it so confidently, and I was like, "Wait, am I wrong?" I was like, "No, I didn't think it was Fennec."
You're right. Yeah, I don't know why I thought of Fennec. Anyway, yeah, Cato is from District 2
because he's a hunk of man. Hunka.
Okay, we don't need to get back into the sexy hair forward thing.
No, this is sexy Fennec.
Oh. Anyway.
Well, it's a little different. He has blonde hair. Not everyone who has blonde hair is ugly, David. Not everyone who has blonde hair is me.
Right. Anyway. um, so yeah, well, speaking of some of the characters, do you want to go ahead and dive into some of the characters, talking about that? Because I know we already talked about the story, or we kind of already briefly went over the story, and we already went over the story in the recap. So do you want to go ahead and dive into some of the characters?
Katniss is since Katniss is the main character, we should dive into her a little bit first. Katniss is the main character in this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And let's think. 2012.
Wesley, you don't need to do any more math.
No. I'm not doing math. I'm trying to think. It's even more dangerous, David. I'm trying to think. Math doesn't require any thinking. It's just numbers. Anyways, no. What I'm trying to think is, so you know how like in more recent years there's been a surge in like women lead roles.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that was as big of a thing back in 2012. So that being the case, this is probably, not necessarily new because they had done it before, but it was a little bit different where you have the main character in the movie is a female,
Mm-hmm.
and they do it amazingly. Like it's not okay. I don't want to get into too much of any of the stuff when it comes to political stuff, anything like that. But a lot of what is put out nowadays isn't trying to just make a movie about a female lead. It's trying to make a movie about a female lead and putting down men.
Mm-hmm.
Which, like, because it's probably been done. It's been done in the past where that's the case with males doing it to women, whatever, yada yada yada. Doesn't make it right, so it shouldn't be done in reverse. This movie, though, does an amazing job with lead character Jennifer Lawrence. That's her name. She does an amazing job in this role. The character is really intriguing. You feel for her. Like we were saying a little bit ago, like, okay, with Rue, think about it this way. Rue was Katniss's prim in the arena.
Mm-hmm.
And she dies. She basically sees basically kind of a symbol of her sister die.
Mm-hmm.
Like she has to lose a little girl, a sister figure, kinda in her life. You feel for that. You feel for a lot of the things that when she's all cocky at the beginning of the movie and she's all like mad with the Capitol. You're not like, oh, look at this arrogant girl. She needs to. Blah. No. You're like, yeah, she's right. I hate the Capitol too.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay.
You sympathize with this character.
And I'm gonna compare this to Rey, just because I know we're gonna talk about Rey.
Star Wars.
Well, that and I know
that's usually what I.
And
that's usually what I compare these things to. And Captain Marvel.
Captain Marvel, yeah. But I know we're also gonna talk about Rey later on, so I'm not gonna get too much into that. But just comparing these two characters, like, okay, so thing that in the story itself, yes, they're both good at what they do, but Rey has no explanation for why. She is literally just a scrapper from the desert.
Mm-hmm.
Katniss has trained her whole life hunting in the woods, and that's what the Hunger Games essentially is: surviving, hunting in the woods.
Yeah. So
she's trained her whole life with a bow, and she doesn't even win every fight she's in. No,
and it's not even like she's like they establish the fact that she's good with a bow, and then all of a sudden she picks up a sword and like bests everyone in a fight.
Exactly.
Exactly. Like she sticks to what she's good at.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And we're established for that, like, pretty much as soon as we're introduced to Katniss. What is she doing?
Mm-hmm.
She's hunting with a bow. So, that's kind of like the, that's very well established in the movie. And like, I don't, going back to the Rey analogy with that, I wouldn't have minded if they had done that with Rey if they had explained why. What if she was young, or what if when she was young she was in like Luke's Jedi Academy? That would explain why she's good with the Force. Anyway,
or even if they like. Well, I probably should not say this, but I was gonna say, or even if like instead of doing stuff with like the Force, like she was able to, because she was more nimble or like able to escape by climbing around on things, that would be explained by the fact she's a scrapper and she does it
exactly
on the junkyards. But
anyway,
enough about
Rey.
we're gonna talk plenty of Star Wars.
Yeah,
I dropped my ring. I need to find that.
Okay, go ahead. I'll keep talking.
I got it.
Okay.
I got it.
Anyway,
that was only of any benefit to anyone who was actually watching the podcast. Which, if you're not, probably a good idea.
Yeah. Anyway, like I said, enough about Rey. Point being with Katniss is, yes, she's very good at what she does, but they establish that very early on and give good reason for her to be good at what she's good at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is an amazing franchise with an amazing female lead, played amazingly by Jennifer Lawrence. She does an amazing job in this movie. Like that just can't be understated. Like she does a really good job. Here's the thing: the character development in this movie is very good. The acting in this movie is very good. You want to know why? Because you don't get into the Hunger Games, you don't get into the action until you get past the hour mark. 2-hour movie. The first hour is spent just with the characters. And it wasn't that boring. The pacing is very good in this.
Good. But sticking on with the actual character of Katniss. So, you mentioned early on, she's talking about, not liking the Capitol. But it's also very interesting to see, because, you go from that to her, not she wasn't drawn in the lottery, but she was still essentially forced to become a tribute, because it was either stand here and do nothing and watch your sister go and die, or volunteer to go in her place.
Well, in all honesty too, like we don't have I mean, we have information of some kind somewhere. I mean, when I was watching the movie, Sarah was talking to me about different things, about some of the past tributes. But like, okay, we don't maybe know a whole lot about why different people are, like why District 12 is such a rare district to have winners from. It's kind of obvious, but like, okay, if Katniss is kind of like, the odds don't look that bad for Katniss with the skill set that they have established. Okay. I don't know why that's maybe not something that someone else could have possibly have up their sleeve too, but it's not, so it doesn't matter. But like, you look at it, like she even says it when she goes in, when they're in the room saying their last goodbyes. She's like, hey, I'm pretty smart, I'm pretty quick, I'm good with the bow, yada yada yada. I can survive. Like, there's a chance. Like, I'm not immediately dead. And so Katniss knows that. Like when Prim is chosen, so she's like, yeah, like you said, she can't let her sister die, because Prim would go in there and she would die.
It would be like Rue.
Point blank.
Yeah.
It'd be exactly like Rue. Except I think her and Rue both would die a lot quicker, because they wouldn't have Katniss around. But like, so it doesn't really give her much choice, but it's also like, not a bad choice to, I mean, it is a bad choice to make. You're going to the Hunger Games, but it's a good choice for her to make. Kind of still forcing her hand, but what was the question?
No, I was actually had a point I was getting to. Oh yeah, so I was talking about how Katniss in the like pretty much in the very beginning of the movie is talking about not liking the Capitol, but she goes from that to having to go to the Capitol and play their game. Because the Hunger Games is not just about the actual going and fighting. You have to actually go to the Capitol and play the game. Like, it starts as soon as you get to the Capitol. You have to go there, and you have to. It's like Haymitch says, like, you have to go there and you have to get people to like you. because a big part of it of the Hunger Games is um the sponsors.
Mhm.
The people in the Capitol can essentially buy you things in the arena. So, like I said, it's just interesting seeing Katniss having to adjust to that to survive, essentially.
That being said, though, like you said, she has to play their games, but it is very obvious she plays it her own way,
Yes.
which comes out in a lot of different rebellious ways, which Snow does not like.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they have the different conversations between the game master and Snow, and he's like, they're talking about Katniss, and Snow is not very happy with a lot of the things that she does. One of which is her shooting an apple, at them. That's an act of rebelliousness that Snow does not like, but they reward with giving her 11 on the charts. Which, in all honesty, he's like, you gave her an 11, and he's like, well, yeah, she earned it. It's like, it wouldn't matter if you didn't give her an 11 because she's still who she is, whether you gave her a 4 or higher. It doesn't matter.
And in fact, the 11 actually ends up hurting her because that makes her a target.
Yeah. But that being said, too, like at the end of the game, she's playing their game, right?
Mm-hmm.
How does she win it? By saying, we're going to play my game real quick. You change the rules. We're going to commit suicide if you don't allow both of us to win. And they have to fold because that wouldn't be entertaining for both of your last two tributes to die. You need a winner. If they don't concede to your rules, then you have to. And so that obviously sparks a lot of the things that happen in the later movies. As you get into the second movie, they do the quarter quell where they do all the past tributes. Well, the reason they do that is because Snow knows that Katniss is the only other one who's going to get picked for 12, so he wants her dead without having to actually have a hand in it. We'll get into more of that later. But it's all like she has to play their game, but you can see the tinge of rebelliousness because she's like, I don't want to play your game, so I'm gonna play your game my way as much as she can, and she does that. It is really a subtle rebelliousness. Like, it is really subtle. But also, it's really done well.
As far as character development goes, you see this too, because when she first gets to the Capitol, she has no interest in being likable or playing their game. But then she realizes what how to do it, essentially. And like you said, she realizes how to do it her own way and basically abuse their system.
Yeah. Peeta. We don't meet him until the Reaping, and his name is chosen. I likened this when I was talking to Sarah. I likened it to Star Wars, like I always do. Everything has to go back to Star Wars. But in early drafts of A New Hope, there was thought of maybe introducing Luke in some scenes before, like maybe looking up and seeing the space battle going on up above. They opted out of that and they decided to do it a more organic way. So where when the droids stumble across Luke in their path, that's when he's introduced into the movie, no sooner. And that's really, like, it's a really good way of telling a story. Like, you don't just bring things in for the sake of bringing things in, and bringing characters in for the sake of bringing characters in. You do it organically, and they do that here. We don't need to know Peeta before he is chosen. I mean, in all honesty, we don't even need to know him at that point in time. It's like, it's just, oh, Peeta Mellark. Like, okay, cool. I don't know who this guy is. And then we get to know him as the story goes on. But before that, we don't need to really know who he is. And they do explain that there is some kind of a background with Katniss and Peeta. They have met before, essentially. But, like, we don't meet him in the movie before the Reaping, and we don't need to meet him before that point. So that's kind of I thought that was a good, like, way of telling the story. There's no stopping to go introduce this other character. and get you to like this other person, so that when the reaping comes, you have anxiety for more than just one person. Aside from like Prim and Katniss, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah. And yeah, and then of course, Peeta and Katniss are like at the beginning are almost like, well, they carry a little bit of this through to the end, but they're almost like polar opposites because, Katniss is the one who's like, I, don't want to be here. I'm gonna make everyone know that. Peeta, of course, he doesn't want to be there either, but he's, okay, I'm gonna make the best of the situation. In the beginning, Peeta is the very much so playing the role of the optimist, and Katniss is very much so playing the role of the pessimist.
Yeah.
And of course, that changes. Well, obviously, Katniss becomes more of an optimist as the movie goes on, but
I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that, like, as the movie goes on, like when they first start, I don't know, like he is shoved into this situation and he has to do the best with he can. But as he goes into it and as he sees more of the reality of it all, and as things go on, he just sees my odds are not great for this.
Mm-hmm.
Like the likelihood of me surviving this is very low. And as Katniss goes into it, she starts to see that her odds are starting to increase. And she also, like you said earlier, with her kind of accepting and starting to learn how to play the system, she starts to kind of get like, it's kind of like, there's two people who are shoved into a situation where like a bad mood is understandable. And one person's like eternally optimist with it. And then their situation just keeps getting worse and worse from where they're at. And the other person's situation starts getting better and better. Eventually that eternal optimist is going to hit a point where they're not going to be so optimistic. And eventually that person in that bad mood, if their situation gets better and better, yeah, eventually they're going to get in a good mood. And that's kind of the way that it goes, and Peeta plays the part too. Like, whenever he's in front of people, he's always, he plays the part well. But like, they have that talk the night before, in that one scene. And I mean, they're talking about it. And it's like, yeah, this is gonna be something where Peeta knows, he's like, there's a very low chance of me surviving this. Like, you have a really good chance of winning this. I don't. And that is something that I'm having to grapple with. I'm having to deal with the fact that, like Mitch said at the beginning of the movie, I'm having to deal with my inevitable death. Like, he lucks out and ends up being able to survive the games. But in all honesty, later on, when we find him in the games, when Katniss finds him after the rule change, he's not in great shape, So he's still, even with the way the story goes, still had a very low chance of surviving, So.
Yeah, and like I said, I think we do see a lot of that through throughout the movie, like I said, just the changing and the kind of difference in perspective. And even at the very end there, when we see like Katniss has the idea of how they can both win even after the rule change, and Peeta doesn't understand it at first.
Yeah.
But yeah.
He's more the damsel in distress in this scenario. Not completely. He's not completely like, he is capable of thinking for himself. He is capable of defending himself, but he's
well,
because of the way that he is. Like, okay, so it's mentioned, Katniss is trying to, when Peeta is trying to boost her ego in front of Mitch, Katniss does the same to him and says that he's strong. Well, he is strong. But when it comes to the likes of Thresh and Kato and some of the other tributes, he's not as strong. And even if he is as strong as some of them, he's not as skilled. So that kind of puts him at a damper because he's more of a melee unit. He's going to be like hand-to-hand combat. He's going to be up close and personal. Whereas Katniss, while she's not as strong, she's more of a ranged. Why do I keep saying that? I'm thinking I was listening to Captain Sauce play tabs earlier today, so that's probably why I have that in my mind. But anyways, so she's more of a ranged unit, so she doesn't need to be as strong because she can do it from a distance. Whereas like Peeta's competing with people who are much better than him, even though he's good at it. So what was the question again? That's going to come my new catchphrase because I'm losing my train of thought. Anyways, he has a lower chance. What was I getting at?
I think that's pretty much what you're getting at. But one thing I do want to point out, too...
Oh, that was a very long and convoluted way of saying it.
But one thing I do want to point out, too, is that during the actual game, I think that, like, if it weren't for each other, Katniss and Peeta, neither one of them would have made it through. Because you see, early on, Peeta is the one that's really protecting Katniss, because he's joined with the careers who are hunting Katniss to mislead them and misguide them and try to save Katniss from them. And to a point, it actually works. It's like if Kato had kept trying to shoot Katniss out of the tree, he probably would have eventually hit her. And obviously Peeta's idea was to camp the night and wait her out. Giving.
And if maybe if he tried to climb the tree without maybe a sword in his hand, or maybe if tried to do it more than just once, he might have made it up.
Exactly. Yeah, he really didn't try that hard.
He went up like 3 branches and fell down. He was like, "Oh, I got a boo-boo. I can't do this no more. Mommy." And then the other girl came over and was like, "Let me shoot her. Here. Oh, I missed her with 1 arrow. All right, well, let's wait the night out." Like, they didn't really try that hard.
No, they did.
Also, she's standing here. She's literally looking, like, the tree's here. She's looking like this. And she's chin on the tree, shooting up in the sky, trying to hit Katniss. It's like, go back a couple feet and use an arc. I don't know if you mentioned this in the recap or if I heard this somewhere, but either way, have some comment. I know you're like big brooding. You're the careers, so you're not smart. You're just big.
Okay, but they're the careers. They should know how to use a bow.
No. That's reserved for Katniss. I mean, Katniss over there, she should just grabbed a handful of rocks and started chucking them down at them. I don't know. They weren't the brightest when it came to this, and then
Anyway, this moment we're talking about is also when we're like, not the first time, but when we're like actually introduced to Rue, like when she kind of actually shows up, because like you see her earlier on, like during the training and everything, but this is kind of when you're actually. When she's actually kind of there more so.
It does lay out a kind of, if you don't really think about it, you don't notice it. But so Sarah told me that in the books, Katniss is actually supposed to be up like really, really high in the tree. Like she's like high in the tree. So Katniss is apparently like a really good climber. But Rue puts Katniss to shame when it comes to climbing, which you kind of get a hint of that with one, in this, Rue is a lot higher up than Katniss is, but two, with the scene in the training facility, Rue is up in the rafters with the knife, and it kind of slightly hints at the fact that, oh yeah, she's a good climber. She got herself up there somehow, And it's like a very subtle way of hinting at that one aspect that, without actually knowing it, you don't really think of too much. But after she mentioned that, it was something that kind of clicked, and I was like, oh, that's kind of a cool, way of telling that aspect without actually telling you that aspect of that character.
But obviously Rue reminds Katniss of Prim, because they're presumably the same age, because Prim is supposed to be 12, and I doubt that Rue is any older.
Yeah.
But Rue is also like, I know Katniss or her and Katniss did several things when they were working together, but think about how long Rue actually survived on her own.
Yeah,
I mean,
she did pretty good for a while.
I mean, yeah, she was mostly avoiding, it was mostly from avoiding people, but uh, so Rue was supposed to be, agile, obviously the climbing, but she's also did a lot with the plant identification. I think is what one of her skill sets that I'd read somewhere, but that was um why did I lose my train of thought? But yeah, like so she's not really suited too well to the fighting, but the surviving part of it, surviving the elements, that's what she could do. And obviously,
But that is one thing.
Obviously,
that is one thing too about it. We keep interrupting each other.
Yeah, we do.
But what I was gonna say was that's honestly one thing about the games that is really important and kind of understated with it all. Like, sure, when you jump into the games in the first, part of that, you do see how much death is in the games. But like, depending on what arena you go into, yes, there probably is a lot of fighting, but there have been tributes to win by basically just surviving.
Hey, Mitch.
No.
That's pretty much how he won.
More or less.
I mean, he went to the edge of the arena and survived until he was the one of two people left.
Well, apparently that's the thing, and I do want to know more about I probably need to actually read it to learn more. But that's the synopsis of what Sarah told me, and then I I listened to a video recapping like his encounter in the Hunger Games, and it sounded like he did a lot more than you would think when you hear survive. Like he did survive a lot longer, and he didn't kill that many people, but he also did take out a couple people. He did go into fights. He did create alliances, stuff like that. Within the games, like he did a lot more than when you just say survive, which we'll dive into that character in a minute.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Rue, there's not really that much except for the fact, the biggest things that she reminds Katniss of Prim, and that's why Katniss, feels that bond to Rue. Which also one thing I do want to point out too is Katniss never really went out of her way to try to kill anyone. Everyone she killed was self-defense.
Yeah.
Which I do think is kind of interesting.
Let's see, who all did she kill?
So
I know she killed the one after Rue,
yeah.
And then she did kill Kato as well. But who else did she kill?
But
I know she gets in some fights with some other people, but
so indirectly, technically, the girl with the tracker jackers,
yeah,
kind of indirectly, but still, she caused it. Let me think.
Was it just the one guy with the spear and then Kato?
I think so, yeah, actually, because the
three?
yeah, because the guard, when she blows up the supplies, Kato kills him, and then the girl, after she gets the
bag, gift baggie,
yeah, what's his name, kills her.
Thresh,
yeah, Thresh kills her. So
yeah.
So Katniss, yeah, like I said, she doesn't really kill that many people. She also doesn't, like I said, she everyone she killed was self-defense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, in all honesty, even the first one that she got, which you would still classify as a kill because she caused it with the Cracker Jacks, but that would lay a lot less guilt on you. It's not Cracker Jacks, is it? Is it?
Cracker Jackers.
Cracker Jack. I don't really care. The Cracker Jacks. I saw the look you gave me, and I was like, yeah, I think I said that wrong. Anyways, but the funny thing was, you gave me the look of what did he say, and then you went right back to just normal face. So I was like, maybe it was just like he spelled something bad or something. I'm not sure, but I wasn't really sure. But then I was like, no, I think I said it wrong. But yeah, no, the Cracker Jackers over here, as I'm gonna start calling them. She cuts those down and they sting, and like you said, an indirect kill. Where was I going with this? Oh, but then the other two, honestly, she only really kills one person upright, like
Directly.
straight out, directly. Kato, she kills out of mercy. The one guy though she kills because the threat for her and Rue. But yeah, all of them are self-defense, like, which I don't really know. That guy threw the spear, and there was two of them. He didn't have another weapon on him that I remember. So what was his plan? I guess hopefully hit Katniss and then just hand-to-hand combat Rue. Maybe he had a knife that I didn't see. I don't know. But anyways.
Also, if he was aiming for Katniss, like he missed too. So like, if you're gonna throw,
she didn't really have.
If you're gonna throw,
she had to dodge that much.
If you're gonna throw the spear, like you might as well make sure you're actually gonna hit the target you're throwing at. So.
And it wasn't like it was that long range. Like, it was kind of close.
And also, if he was,
he probably could have.
Also, if he was actually
reached out with the spear and poked her.
Also, if he was actually aiming for Rue, why would you aim for the kid when Katniss is a lot more dangerous?
Yeah, I mean, take out the dangerous. It's not a thing where, like, sometimes in video games I'll take out the smaller opponents just because they're easier to take out, and then I can focus on the bigger one.
Yeah, that's not how that works.
But that's not how this really works in real life. No. Video games are much. See, bosses in video games, they have set moves.
They're predictable.
You can dodge those. Exactly. Katniss is gonna kill you. That's what happens.
Yeah. Anyway.
Well, he wasn't the brightest. He was a career. I think he was a career, so that's probably why he wasn't too smart.
Anyway, talking about careers again, not really a whole lot of character there, but it's worth mentioning because he's the or I guess he is the main antagonist in this movie. But Kato. Mm. So, like I said, the male tribute from District 2, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah. So
you can get this all wrong, but it won't matter because no one is here to correct us right now.
Exactly. Call us idiots in the comments, but you're not here right now, so
Yeah. And call us idiots now. Who's the idiot now, huh?
Us.
Okay, cool.
Anyway, so yeah, he's a career, and that's really all there is to him.
Yeah, I will say, like, honestly, it was done really well. Like I said, the acting in this and the casting in this was done really well. Like, Kato is obviously he comes across, he's big, he's brooding, he comes across as, very arrogant, but also, like, he can back up a lot of that cockiness too, because he does have a lot of kills under his belt. And so when it comes into that last scene where he dies, it is kind of sad, when he's holding Peeta. Because, like, you can tell three of them there are sitting there knowing that they're playing a game that none of them win. Sure, Katniss and Peeta walk away alive, but I don't know if life is necessarily winning. Because of all the stuff with it. That come with, like, the baggage of having to survive the Hunger Games, and even some other things that we might dive into a little bit later. But, like, Kato is sitting there. He's like, I'm dying. I know I'm dying. Yeah, sure, I might be able to snap his neck and maybe take you out, and then able to be revived by the medics. When they show up. But, like, I'm dying. I can snap his neck, but I'm dying. It's sad. It's a sad moment, and I don't necessarily know. I think the biggest reason why you feel empathetic for this character that throughout the whole entire movie you've been rooting against is because he's just a kid. And I say that not being too far removed from, he's probably 18. I'm not too far removed from 18, but still, like, he's just a kid. He's doing this because he has to. I mean, yeah, sure. Some of the districts 1 and 2, some of the careers kind of just volunteer, so he might have just volunteered. I'm not sure, but like he's still playing a game that he knows he's playing a game, and it's not something that he necessarily wants to do. Like he does, but he doesn't.
Mm.
Like he sees the reality of it now, and it is kind of a sad moment right before he dies.
Yeah, it is. And that's the thing too. Like, it also kind of puts it in perspective. Like, yes, you're like you're rooting against certain people during the games, but when like if you put it in perspective, really, like they're everyone in the all the tributes are literally kids who are forced into this by a tyrannical government.
Mm. I mean, it's not like in a movie, like a high school movie, where you have a bunch of kids and like there's this big bully over here who like you root against because like he's just a bad person. Like all we know of Kato in this movie is that he doesn't like Katniss because she's considered to be better than him. So he has a bit of an ego,
Mm-hmm.
problem. Other than that, he's just trying to win the game. Does that make him a bad person? No. He's trying to kill the main character, so yes, that makes him a bad person in the realm of the movie. But he's not a bad person for any reasons that the movie gives.
Mm-hmm.
If you take away the elements of the movie that he's just trying to fight to survive and probably bring honor to his family and his
Which is
his
that's the thing, like
district.
in the movie, he's the antagonist, but he's still not really a villain, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I dropped my ring again.
Uh-huh. Anyway, I don't know, earlier you mentioned you also wanted to talk about Haymitch briefly.
I have a lot to say about Haymitch.
Okay, well, go ahead then.
Yeah, you said briefly. I got a lot to talk about
Okay, well,
Haymitch.
go ahead.
Well, the main thing of it is more so like it all does kind of track together. The main thing of it is so Haymitch is one of the very few winners from District 12. So this is not a common thing.
Mm-hmm.
From what little bit I know about all this, there's 3, including Haymitch, not including Katniss and Peeta. There's 3 winners from District 12. One from the Ballad of Songbird and Snakes, which I've heard that apparently she's supposed to be from District 12. Some other person, and then Haymitch. So, what I really want to dive into with the character of Haymitch is the fact that he's a drunk. More so on that, why he's a drunk, and kind of understandably why he's a drunk. So, Haymitch is the winner of the last quarter quell. He is the winner of the 50th Hunger Games. Now, within this Hunger Games, the fun little thing they threw in was they are going to double the tributes. So instead of 2 and 2, or 2 from each district, there's 2 and 2. 2 boys and 2 girls. So he is one of the lucky winners in District 12 to be nominated. So instead of the typical, 24? He has 48 people. So he has 1 in 48 odds now of winning the Hunger Games. So his odds are even worse. So we did talk a little bit about some of the stuff going on with his game. There was one of the girls from his district. He does end up teaming up with her for a while, and they do some damage within the game. But for the most part, like you said, he does mostly survive. He mostly just goes in there, gets what he needs, and is trying to survive the whole entire time. Now, apparently, an important part of this is that this arena kind of had 2 sides to it. So one side was a bunch of woods, and one side was a mountain. And it turns out the mountain was a volcano. So said volcano erupts and causes a lot of death amongst a lot of the careers went up that way. So that wipes out a bunch of the careers. But he makes his way over through the forest. Well, like you said, he makes his way over to the edge of the map and finds out that there's a force field there, which he sees brings things back up. Doesn't really think much of it, but he notices that, you can, apparently it's like a cliff thing, and if you like he threw a rock off of it, eventually the rock comes back up. So anyways, him and his partner or whatever, the girl from District 12, realize that they're like down to the last maybe 4 or 5 tributes or whatever. So he's like, well, I don't want to kill you. We've developed a really tight bond here. I really don't want either one of us to die, but it's going to happen. We probably should split our ways. Anyway, she ends up dying not too long after that. Apparently, like, she gets like killed by some like flamingos or something, like hybrid flamingos. I don't know. Like,
okay.
apparently they attack her, like they poke her eyes out, and he gets there, just in time to see her die, which is kind of sad. Which is a 1.1 in why he's a drunk. He has to watch a bunch of people that he knows and maybe even cares about die. One thing I do want to mention though is that apparently Haymitch is a really fast person. Like, he's extremely fast, and that's another reason why he lasts so long in the Hunger Games. He can run away extremely quickly. I mean, that sounds like a coward way out, but if you survive, whatever. Anyways, so it gets down after that. It gets down to him and one other tribute, a female. I believe it's from District 2, but she's one of the careers. And they kind of go at it for a little bit. They have a bit of a fight, and they are kind of just like, apparently, like, Haymitch, like, he's holding on to his guts. Like, he is pretty badly wounded. She's badly wounded. Like, she doesn't have an eye or something like that. Anyway, so they're running, and he runs to the edge of the map, and she throws her axe or whatever at him. He ducks, knowing that it's going to end up coming up. I think they both collapse. And then eventually it comes back up or whatever. I could be telling the story wrong, but like you said earlier, he ducks, causing the axe to end up burying it in her head, killing her, causing him to be the winner. Now, the Capitol doesn't like this. Haymitch is deemed the winner. He gets medical treatment. He's the winner. No one says anything otherwise. But nobody, like Snow, who's in charge at this point in time, does not like this. He does not like that the Capitol was made a fool. So I'm not entirely sure why that would be the perception, seen. Like, why? Because he used the map, the Capitol is seen as a fool. But that's how I guess it's felt. That's kind of how it's seen. Whatever. So what's his name? Haymitch has a mother, I believe a brother, and I know a girlfriend. So Snow has all 3 of them killed because of Haymitch's actions and defiance of the Capitol. So not only has Haymitch had to go through the Hunger Games, which he survived and was given the riches that all winners of the Hunger Games are given, and, basically a better life than he's ever lived in District 12, he has a short-lived, brief time of happiness, and then his whole family gets killed.
Mm-hmm.
Not only that, he is... At this point in time, there's one other winner from District 12 who's alive, but they are very, very old. So not long after that, they die. So not only has he had to survive the Hunger Games, he had all his family and friends and people he loved and cared about killed, he also has to, year after year after year, essentially train, and watch new tributes die every year.
Mm-hmm.
So he does try to begin with, but eventually that's going to beat anyone down. So when we meet him in the 74th, this is 24 years. He's done this 24 times. Maybe not 24. I don't know how. I guess it'd be the year after he might start helping. I don't really know how it all works, but essentially 24 times. It's been 24 years since he's been in the Hunger Games. He's had to deal with all this. It is no wonder that he's a drunk because, what happiness are you going to find in this life? Now, that is one thing, though, about his character. With this, he sees potential in Katniss. There's some potential in Peeta, but he really sees it in Katniss. And so he agrees to be sober. He agrees to actually help her train. And you see as the series goes on the bond that is formed between Katniss and Haymitch. But like, when you look at him, like he comes into it, you don't know anything about this character. You just see this drunk guy, and you're like, man, if this guy could only just get a grip and help these characters out. But it's like when you really stop and think and break down and see more about the actual character, you understand just how much he's been through, and understand like very few people would come out of that not looking like he does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the thing. Like I said, yeah, he's a drunk, but he went through a lot. That's why he's a drunk.
Mm-hmm. Like, he is mentally very messed up, and it's not of his own choosing. It's of just life, not normal life, just the Hunger Games life. But so that is one thing, and we dived into this a little bit more with the next one. But the active defiance that Katniss and Peeta both show. Snow makes a visit to Katniss saying that I'll kill your family unless you make the love story that y'all been talking about look very convincing. Which, speaking of, we probably should dive a little bit into the last character of the movie, the love story. Maybe a little bit into Gale, but Gale's not really. He's there. Liam Hemsworth is just there for his good-looking face.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, like the that's one thing we haven't really talked about is the love story between Katniss and Peeta, and like I don't actually know how much in. Okay, so obviously Peeta does mention when they're in the interviews that he has feelings for Katniss. I actually don't know how much of it in the movie, like how much of Katniss doing it in the movie was actually like real, or if it was all just played up for the drama of it, for the because she was playing the game. I don't know.
Yeah. Obviously, anyone who knows the story, like, it does work out in the end. But yeah, for this one, that is one thing is like, and it's kind of a clever way of doing it. It's like, okay, we want a love story, all right? How are we going to do this without forcing it? Ooh, I have an idea. We're going to force it. But it's like the characters are being forced into it too. So it doesn't seem forced within the realm of reading/watching it, that love story is forced in that universe, not in what we're seeing. And it's like, and it's kind of a clever way of going about doing it. Like, yeah, you get your cake and you eat it too, which I don't know. I think we've talked about this. I don't understand that. Phrase. What's it called?
Analogy.
Analogy. That's what I was looking for. I don't understand that analogy because like you can't have your cake and eat it too, but like I don't. Why wouldn't? What do you do with it otherwise?
Well, is it just like you get to eat the cake, but then you have another cake? Is that what it's talking about?
Well, there's only say about one cake. They say you can't have your cake and eat it too. But if you don't eat it, then it just goes bad. Speaking from experience in this realm, okay. So the tradition. I find it very stupid, but the tradition of when you get married, you save a little bit of the cake, you put it in the freezer, and you eat it on your first anniversary. I will tell you, I love cake. And I will also tell you that was the worst cake I've ever had. Sarah actually got upset with me because I didn't like it. And I was like, I'm sorry. Like, I love you. I just hate the cake. Like, I feel like that's justifiable. But it wasn't. I was in the wrong. Know that as a man, I was in the wrong. I'm the husband here. That's the natural position. But anyways, I probably shouldn't have said that because now she has that clip of me saying that I was wrong, and I always admit that I'm right. So, but no, I understand how you have your cake and eat it too. But in this situation, you can have your cake and eat it too because
I'll make sure to
you have the.
I'll make sure to clip that and send it to her.
Yeah, I will. I'm definitely going to do something to you when I see you. I just gotta figure out what I'm gonna do. It can't be assault, but it also can't be like a pie in the face because you'll like that.
Anyway, we done talking about because we've been talking about this for an hour and 20 minutes. So we done talking about the Hunger Games because we've got a lot more to move on to.
We do. I think we're good to go ahead and move on to what I guess quizzes.
Trailcast trivia.
All right, let's get into it.
We don't actually have a transition for this yet. I was thinking something along the lines of maybe like Trailcast trivia. But I don't know. We'll come up with something.
Trivia. Yeah.
Okay, we don't need you singing. We don't really need
Well, we
me
have
singing,
you.
but
I was about to say we have you singing,
so
so
we don't even really need me singing. But anyway,
So how do you want to go about doing this?
so I've got I don't know if you've actually read the answers to these yet, but I figure I'll go ahead and just ask you, even though the first one you gave me, so you already know the answer to it. But
And I've already talked about it in this podcast.
we've actually mentioned a lot of these in the podcast episode. But so I only have 5 right now. They are the 5 that were on our YouTube community page over the weekend. So if you answer those, you already got a sneak peek of these. But in the future, I'm gonna try to have like 10 to 15. There will be 5 on our YouTube community page the week before you get a sneak peek. But I'm gonna try to in the future have like 10 to 15 of these. So stay tuned for that. But today I only have 5. So you can answer along with us here if you have not if you didn't see those on the YouTube community page, or if you did, you can still play along. So, question 1, and like I said, this is the one that Wesley actually gave me, so he's already gonna know the answer. But we'll give you a few seconds. I'll ask the question. We'll talk about Wesley and I'll talk about it for a few minutes, and then we'll reveal the answer. Okay, so question number 1: which Hunger Game did Hamish Abernathy win? Is it A, 47, B, 50, C, 53, or D, 55? As Wesley mentioned, he did just mention that like 15 minutes ago. So if you're paying attention, you already know the answer to this question. So I don't really know how much we can actually talk about that question, but so I'll just let Wesley go ahead and just tell you the answer to that one, because you're still thinking.
What was the question again?
Which of the Hunger Games did
Abernathy. Who is Abernathy?
Hamish Abernathy. That's his last name.
Well, okay. Here's the real fun thing. Okay, I am personally now. I'm not on the doc. So I don't remember which letter corresponds with which number. So I'm going to pick A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, C.
C? Alright, so C was...
I said C. Yeah, C.
C was
C.
53.
Oh, I got it wrong. David, I got it wrong.
Yeah, so
we just talked about it.
So the correct answer was B, 50. It was the second quarter quell. So 50. Quarter quells, every 25 years. Anyway, yeah. It was 50. So now, I don't know if you're
I'm 0 for 1.
So this one is another pretty easy one. But in the first Hunger Games, what does the Mockingjay pin originally given to Katniss Everdeen by her sister Prim symbolize? Is it A, peace and unity, B, wealth and prosperity, C, hope and rebellion against the capital, or D, loyalty to the districts?
Well, while everyone else who is listening to this is going to think about it for a second and produce an answer, I personally am going to click over on this doc over here that gives me all the answers. I'm going to scroll down
Yeah, the answers are at the bottom of the page.
Trivia answers, and I'm going to see it says C. Hope and rebellion against the Capitol. You know what this is making me think of? You know that the quiz show that Michael and Holly do at the Dunder Mifflin picnic?
Yeah.
This is making me think of that. I don't know why.
But you just gave the answer to everyone, so yeah. But it also reminds me of like I don't know if you remember like maybe like kindergarten or like early elementary grades, like you have like worksheets or something that have like questions or whatever, but then the answers were just upside down at the bottom of the page.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember those.
I love those. I loved those.
Well, because also I can read upside down, so I could read them without even looking like I was reading them.
Yeah, I love those pages. I do have a question though. So, hope of rebellion against the Capitol. So, at what point? Because I thought, from what I had heard and knew about this, I thought that the pin was basically, well, like, I thought it became a symbol, not that it was one to begin with.
I think it was originally just a symbol of hope, and then it became the symbol for the rebellion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. What's the next question?
All right.
I don't know it.
Yeah, you're looking at the answer though.
No, I'm looking at you. I'm looking at you. You're not the answer, are you?
All
I
right,
hope
so,
not. That was a bad taste in my mouth.
3. What was the name of the luxury train that transported the tributes to the Capitol in the Hunger Games? Was it A, the Capitol Express, B, the Victory Train, C, the Tribute Transport, or D, the Capitol Chariot?
No. I just screwed over everyone who was actually playing along because I just answered it along
yes,
with
you did.
you.
You did.
I don't care. Nobody cares. Nobody really cares. It's the Capitol Express, all you
Okay, well, what was the letter?
smart, lovely people out there. A, right?
Yes.
Let's see. Yes.
No, it was A, not C.
Yeah. Oh, dang it! I'm
No,
I'm
not
I'm
O, it's
I'm
A.
0 for 4 now. A B C D E F G. You know, David, in the future, don't give me the trivia if you're gonna ask me it.
Well, I'm more so asking them.
Yeah, but I feel like it'd be better if the trivia, at least that you have.
Yeah, in the future,
don't tell me.
In the future, I'm gonna have my answers on a separate doc, so you can't see them. And
I'm going to hack into your email, and I will still have it.
Well, actually, you have to scroll past all the Ahsoka stuff to get there, so I didn't think you would scroll that far down.
Hey. I got my little mouse over here. I got my little wheel, and I go. It's really fast. You just click, and you go wow, and then you're down there.
Yeah, but normally when I send you stuff, you don't read it, so.
I surprisingly read this one.
Exactly.
I almost didn't. But when I opened it up, I scrolled to the bottom. I saw that you were putting in the answers, and I was like, "Oh, this is gonna be important."
Yeah, I should have put them in a separate doc. Anyway, so
I should have.
Question 4. Don't answer it before I'm done this time.
Who, me?
Okay, so which district is Rue from, and what is her special talent that helps her in the Hunger Games? So is it A, District 12? Why do I have that on there twice? That's weird. Okay, A, District 12, expert archery skills. That's not the actual B I had. Hold up. I put the wrong thing on there.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm sure. Wouldn't be the Trailcast without some kind of.
Yeah, I was about to say everything was actually running smoothly today, so something had to come up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's really my own fault because I put the wrong thing on there. Anyway, I'm just gonna do.
It's okay to be an idiot.
Okay, I'll just do it as A, B, and C instead of A, B, C, and D. Okay, so is it A?
That's the moral of the story. It's okay to be an idiot.
District.
It's okay to be a David.
Is it A, District 12, expert archery skills? Is it B, District 5, speed and strength? Or is it D, District 11, plant identification and agility?
That's all we can play.
That's
all right.
Yeah, I was about to say that's copyright.
Yeah, don't worry. I'll need a little bit of it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So you mentioned this in the podcast. Well, we mentioned this in the podcast as it is, but you mentioned what she was good at. I didn't specifically know that.
Mm-hmm.
But I did know where she was from, so even with the way that this was structured, I would have been able to guess that it was whatever the last letter number was, with her being from District 11 and plants and whatever.
Plant identification and agility. All right, so now
Yes.
this one, I actually didn't know the name of. I mean, obviously this one's actually gonna be pretty easy, but I actually didn't know the name of these. So if I had this as a fill in the blank, I don't know if you would either. But all right, so what is the name of the genetically engineered creature that Katniss and Peeta encounter near the end of the Hunger Games book? And what disturbing characteristic does it have? So, this is from the book. They were in the movie, but they didn't have the characteristic in the movie. It's from the characteristics from the book. So is it A?
Hold up. Okay, I was gonna say, if you give me fill in the blank, I hate fill in the blank. That was like always my least favorite thing on test.
I got the multiple choice. So is it A? Tracker jackers. They mimic the sound of human voices. Mockingjays. They can imitate the appearance of other creatures. C. Jabberjays. They can mimic the voices of the tribute's loved ones. Or D. Fire beasts. They can control fire and create deadly flames.
I actually, and this is not because I looked at it. I don't remember looking at the answers for that when I looked at that far. And my retention rate is very low. Anyways, I'm thinking Jabberjays because we've already had the Cracker Jacks. We already had, it wouldn't be the Mockingjays. And it wouldn't be whatever the other one was that you said.
Beast, yeah.
The Fire Beast. So I'm thinking it's the Jabberjays. Also, because Jabberjays were at one point used for the rebellion, so I know that Snow doesn't really like them too much, but
yeah. So Jabberjays.
Anyways,
they can mimic the voices of the tribute's loved ones. That was the answer. Yeah. So like I said, I only have 5 this time. I will get more questions in the future, and I won't share the answer. I won't have the answers where Wesley can see them, so he'll also be answering along with y'all. So, in the future. But that's all I got for now. So, let's go ahead and move on to, I guess, What's New With You, and we'll talk about Ahsoka and What's New With You. Because that's what What's New With You has become at this point until Ahsoka's over. So, yeah. I guess, roll the transition.
What's new? What's new with you? What's new? What's new with you? What's new? What's new with you? Yeah.
So Wesley, what is new with you?
absolutely nothing.
Good. So let's talk about Ahsoka.
Dive right in. Okay, so with that in mind, I do want to make this one comment. We've been talking about Ahsoka for the past, this past episode, we talked about episode 5, so
4.
5 weeks, I guess.
Well, this is 4, so we talked about it for 4 weeks.
Okay, episode 4. So
Yeah.
we've talked about it for 4 weeks. Each week, I usually start talking about it because you asked me my thoughts on the episode.
Mhm.
I want to hear from you to start off this
Okay.
week. I want to hear what your thoughts are on episode 5 and 6, which is 2 episodes that we're talking about this week.
We're talking about episodes 5 and 6 this week. We actually postponed our recording date so we could talk about them both, because normally we have been recording on Tuesday. That's when they come out. But we record before they come out on Tuesday, because they come out at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. So, we postponed until after the episode came out, so we could talk about it. So,
Welcome.
I'm going to start off just talking about episode 5, and then we'll move on to episode 6 later on. So, episode 5. When it came out, that was amazing. That was probably the okay. Well, let me phrase this. I know I just said we'll postpone episode 6 till later on, but I think they've gotten better as they've been going on. Like, I know people said that episode 4 was like the best yet when it came out. Episode 5 was even better. Episode 6 was even better. Um, but episode 5, I'm just gonna dive right into the big thing is the I absolutely loved seeing the Clone Wars flashback.
Hmm.
Seeing Hayden in the Clone Wars armor, young Ahsoka getting to see Rex, that was really cool.
Yeah.
And I do want to say this too. I know you mentioned the that you didn't like the theory that Ahsoka had PTSD, even though that's the angle they went with in this episode. Because they did the thing of, like, she has guilt for essentially leaving Anakin, and she also fears herself that she might one day, that her fate might be the same as Anakin's.
Hmm.
And so that's kind of that's the angle they went with in this episode. But as far as like my thoughts on the episode, like I said, I loved it. The choreography and the duel in the World Between Worlds was amazing. I loved the Darth Vader, all the Darth Vader stuff. Like I said, I loved getting to see Anakin again and actually seeing like the Clone Wars flashbacks. Also, one thing that I actually think they did really well and I really liked was all the stuff with Hera and Jason when they were looking for Ahsoka, and Jason actually hearing the lightsaber duel in the waves.
Hmm.
I really like that because, like I said, like I mentioned this before with Hera. I think Hera is a lot like Leia in the original trilogy, where she's not necessarily like force sensitive to the way a Jedi would be, but she can still sense things through the Force. She has,
Hmm.
which So I also really like that aspect of it. Yeah, I mean, it's been a week since I watched this episode, so it's not really as fresh in my mind as episode 6 is. But like I said, I thought it was really good.
Yeah, no, this episode definitely so I'm gonna dive into a bunch with this. A bunch of different thoughts that I had with this, but most of them are positive. So for anyone who's scared that, oh, I'm back on the same rant that I'm always on, I really like this episode. This was an amazing episode. Like you said, I loved seeing Anakin. The duel that her and Ahsoka and Anakin had was amazing. I love the transitions between like Vader and Anakin, and even Anakin or Hayden Christensen as Vader, like in the full, like before he gets cut up and put in the suit. I love those transits. I got everything with it was amazing. They did a really good job with it. I did like seeing the flashbacks to the Clone Wars. Now, here's the thing. And here's the thing that I still will say, that as much as I love that episode, and I was like I was sitting, I was watching the show. I had a smile all the way across my face watching that whole entire episode. I loved every moment of it. It was amazing. But that being said, that aspect of it isn't going to let me forget that I can still say that the show is good. But there still are questions that need to be answered about the character of Ahsoka that I feel like might just get brushed underneath the rug and just have to be like, oh, just accept that that's how it is. Even though they haven't answered questions like, okay, PTSD, understandable. But if her PTSD mostly comes from the Clone Wars, then why is she such a different character than she was in Rebels?
Well, okay. I don't want to interrupt too much here, but I think a lot of the PTSD elements come from the fact that, or come more from Rebels in her, coming to the realization that Anakin is Vader. Because, think about, just that on its own, but also the questions of, like, she feels somewhat responsible because she feels like she turned her back on Anakin when he needed her most. She also feels like, or she also is scared that her fate is going to be the same as Vader. She's also scared that she might end up one day turning to the dark side because her master did.
And that's all fair, but it's not explained.
Mm-hmm.
So, and even with this episode showing that she might have PTSD with it, like the character at the beginning of Ahsoka is such a departure from the character that we've known that still needs to be explained. But that doesn't stop me from loving this episode and even jumping ahead to episode 6. I loved a lot of things about episode 6. It's starting to ramp up. I have basically nothing negative to say about episode 5. Like, I really have nothing to say about that. Our cat was scratching at the door. Nothing negative to say about it. I love seeing Hayden Christensen. I love seeing the Clone Wars flashbacks. It was a fun ride. Like I said, I had a smile across my face the whole entire time. I was a very happy Star Wars fan. But I do want to make this one comment, and this is one thing that I do want to kind of pose a question to you as well. And I'll let you answer in just a second. But my main question is, what is the rewatchability of these shows? So, like, we can go back and watch all these movies and all, and that you could sit down for, hour and a half, 2 hours, and you watch a movie. For a show, you have to sit down for a much longer period of time. Yeah, sure. Like, I watch The Office over and over again. It's a little bit different than watching something like this. Okay. So my thought with that is, so we've had this happen before. Andor is very similar to this, where it starts off very slow and it ramps up and gets good as it goes on. Ahsoka's done that too. Because like you said, the first couple episodes, they were kind of slow, kind of just laying some groundwork. And now we're getting to the real depth of the story. That may not necessarily be a good thing when you're trying to revitalize a Star Wars fan base. But even aside from that, people have to, more or less sit through the first couple episodes to get to this, to understand it. What's the rewatchability to it? Like, how often have you gone back to even some of the Mandalorian episodes and rewatched a lot of those story arcs? Like, I know I have, and I know you have. We've rewatched all the original trilogy, the prequel trilogy, all that stuff, all those movies, time and time again. But I haven't gone back and watched any of the series over. I don't know what you've done, but it's like it's much harder to get back into that. I made this comment last time we were talking about this, how there are certain elements where a lot of these shows probably shouldn't be shows. They probably should be movies. And while, like I said, Ahsoka's going to turn out to be a great show, but what do you think the implication of it being a show and not a movie will be in the long run? Like, do you think, like, okay, let's say the Thrawn trilogy comes out. Do you think people are going to really go back and watch the Ahsoka trilogy, even if it leads right into the Thrawn trilogy? Like, if they know the information, do you really think that they're going to go back and rewatch it? Would you go back and rewatch it if you knew the information that led into it?
Okay, so I think...
What are your thoughts?
I think these last 2 episodes are rewatchable, but I don't really know how much about the first 4 are. And that being said, I don't know if that brings down the rewatchability of these 2 episodes. So, yeah, I don't know. Like, I would say it's probably gonna be more rewatchable than like the Book of Boba Fett or Kenobi, because, like, in all honesty, I know at some point we're probably going to talk about those on the podcast, so we're probably gonna have to come back to those and rewatch them. In my own time, I probably won't ever rewatch either of those shows. Maybe in a couple years I'll rewatch The Mandalorian, just because I did really like The Mandalorian. And I think Ahsoka's going to be that way too. But I don't think I could rewatch them over and over again the same way I could rewatch Star Wars. Like, let's say like Revenge of the Sith. I could rewatch that movie over and over and over again. I love that movie.
Mm. Do you think in any way, like, this is just personal, what's your thoughts on it? And I don't know, if you don't have to have thoughts on it, because I don't really know what my thoughts on this are. But do you think that's, like, good for Star Wars, good for the franchise? Or do you think that's going to, like, yeah, sure, Star Wars has been a little bit more, they haven't been putting out as much content as, like, Marvel has. But do you think, like, the show aspect of it, do you think that's a good thing for Star Wars, and it's been good since the movie franchises weren't doing so well, or do you think in the long run this might hurt them a little bit with like this era maybe not being as watchable? Like, you know, you have to watch a lot more to know the story.
Well, and so that's one thing too that I feel like a lot of I've heard people like maybe not as like fans who've only watched pretty much the live action stuff in Star Wars have talked about this with Ahsoka. Like, it's Ahsoka itself, the show itself, almost is kind of gatekept by Clone Wars and Rebels.
Yeah.
And you're talking about the Thrawn trilogy. So, I don't think, this. I think the Ahsoka show is going to end on a cliffhanger, lead directly into Heir to the Empire. If I had to make a prediction, that's how it's going to end. But I don't think that's going to be as. I think that's going to be more similar to. Like, if you want to rewatch Heir to the Empire later on, I think that's going to be more similar to like, watching Ahsoka now, where, I've watched all the Clone Wars and all the Rebels. I didn't really feel a need to rewatch them before Ahsoka, and I was there were a few things that I didn't really remember, but as the show's gone on, I've remembered stuff more so from Rebels because I've only watched Rebels once. So yeah, I feel like that's gonna be where Heir to the Empire is at. As for the rewatchability of Ahsoka itself, like I said, I think there is some, especially more so than some of the other shows, especially all the Marvel shows. Because I know you just mentioned those. But that is a valid question of what's the rewatchability going to be for the average person for Ahsoka.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean that's the thing. That's one reason why like. So, I feel like Ahsoka is gonna get. Okay, Ahsoka is a much more notable character than Cassian Andor is.
Mm-hmm.
So let's just put that out there right here, right now, okay? But I feel like Ahsoka, while having a little bit more hype, I feel like is going to get treated very much in the same way that Andor was. And Andor was a good show. I haven't watched the whole of it, but I've gotten into it enough to know that, like, I understand why people said it was a good show. But you do have to get into it a little bit. And the same thing is so far what I see from Ahsoka. Like, you have to get into it a little bit before you get to episode 5 and episode 6, which, these I feel like have been, blown out of the water. Like, these are hit out of the park home runs. Like, they've been done. They were done very well. I loved everything in it. Both these episodes were great, but I feel like, the fact that you have to get through so much before you can get to this. And while, yes, you can still say that it is somewhat self-contained, like, you need to know. What I heard, they said that they wanted to make it where you didn't have to watch Rebels and Clone Wars, but having watched those two is a lot of help to understand the characters. Now, in my case, it might have actually hurt me a little bit. It might have been better if I'd never watched those two, because then, I wouldn't have a problem with much of the character development in this. But, like, still with that, you still have to get through at least 3 episodes, maybe 4, before you're like, oh, yeah, this is really good,
Yeah. And yeah, I do see your point there. But I know you just mentioned episode 6 too, and that's really what I want to talk about with this too. So if you don't have anything else to say about episode 5, I do want to move to episode 6.
All I want to say about episode 5 is that as far as characters go, I like Ahsoka the White, as we're going to call her. I like that character. Like, at the end of the episode, she was making jokes, she was making quips. Like, maybe not huge ones, but she was, saying stuff. She wasn't being as stoic. And obviously, yeah, it has a lot to do with the fact that she kind of faced her fear with Anakin. So I think I'm going to like her from here on out. But, that still doesn't appease the fact that I do have problems with the first 4 episodes, and I would like those to be more explained. They won't be, because with episode 5, they redirected that character. She had her moment in episode 5, so moving forward, she's good. But it's like, I would like to know why she, like, more as to why her character after Rebels, in the period of time in the original trilogy, why she got to this point, you know. But moving on, I like Ahsoka the White. I haven't had any problems with her. I mean, she wasn't in episode 6 as much. There was that amazing opening scene, which we'll talk about. But, you know, I do like the way the character looks at this point in time.
So yeah, that opening scene. I think what you're really talking about is the when
Yeah.
why am I blanking on the droid's name?
Oof. Yeah.
Um,
Hu Yang.
Oh yeah. When he was telling the story, he starts off, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. I got chills when I watched that that line.
Oh yeah, it was definitely chilling.
Yeah, but yeah. So I loved every minute of episode 5 too. But I loved episode 6. That was such a good episode. So obviously, we get you get to actually see this new galaxy for the first time. It's just one planet, but still, we actually are there now. Grand Admiral Thrawn is back finally, and we get to see Ezra all in the same episode. Now, I loved every minute of it with Thrawn and with Ezra. We can talk about those later too. But one of the biggest things that actually stood out to me in this episode too was Balin's skull. I liked it, liked the character before. We really didn't know much about that. We still don't know much about the character, but we learn a lot more about that character in this episode. Like, for one thing, before we knew he was a former Jedi, but in this episode we also learned that he was in the Clone Wars. He fought in the Clone Wars. Because Thrawn makes the comment of calls him General Balin Skull of the Jedi Order. So he fought in the Clone Wars. He may have even been an Order 66 survivor. We don't know. But, I want to learn more about this character now. Because, now that they've given us a little bit, that kind of tease the water of, who this character might be. It's just, I want to learn more about it now. And also, I feel like that whole arc with, Balin Skull and Shin Hati is going to be one of the better parts of this show, or one of the best parts of the show. I'm just kind of curious where exactly they're going with this. Also, I kind of half expected them to either name drop or hint at the Zhejiang Vong with this other galaxy. I don't know if they still might or not. I don't know, because that also kind of ties into Timothy Zahn's Thrawn trilogy. So I don't know if that.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're going that route or not, but it would be interesting. Like I said, I have a lot of questions now from this episode, but I still loved every minute of it. I'll let you go ahead and kind of talk briefly about it, and then we can talk about some of the questions that both of us might have from this episode, and maybe some of the things we liked about it. Anyway.
I will say that is one thing that I think really, why I like this one so much. Not only because we did get to see Thrawn for the first time, which amazing.
Yes, absolutely.
He looks amazing. It is. Correct me if I'm wrong. It is the same guy who played him in Rebels, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So he sounds amazing. Whether he was the same guy or not, he sounds amazing. And he looks amazing. This is a blue guy, but he looks amazing. They did a really good job with the way he looks. The way he talks, okay, Balin Skull up until this point has been kind of like that menacing, kind of he seems like he's the smartest in the room kind of guy. Like he's the wise old Jedi, even though he's like Sith. He seemed like that character, and he made Balin Skull stumble over his words. Like that's the kind of power that just Thrawn being in a room. Like that's the way it makes it feel. Like obviously Balin didn't like stumble over his words when he was talking to Thrawn, but you know what I'm talking about when they were talking.
Mm-hmm.
Like Thrawn just has that commanding power, and it was just the way that he talks, like everything. There's points in the episode where I think later on when they find out that Ahsoka, that the Night Sisters or the mothers see that Ahsoka is coming. They'd mention it to him, and he's like, that's not something that I'd like to hear. But like you can hear, like while he's saying something, like, oh, this isn't going according to my plan, he's figuring out how to make it work.
Mm-hmm.
You can just see the calculations. You can see like we've never seen a character this smart in Star Wars, and this is going to be amazing to see how it's played out in the new trilogy that they're going to start doing.
That's the thing I love about Thrawn too as a character is like, in the actual Thrawn trilogy by Timothy Zahn, he goes up against the New Republic and Luke's New Jedi Order, and he does it completely on his way. Like he goes toe to toe with Jedi just strictly based off of his wit alone.
Mm-hmm.
He's not force sensitive. He's just a man, really. Like he's not even that physically strong, but he goes like up against all this with strictly just his wit.
Mm-hmm. I did like to see. I was kind of curious as the episode was coming towards its ending. I was kind of curious. Okay, are we gonna find Ezra in this, or are we just gonna hint at where he might be? We did see him at the end of this. That was cool. That was nice to see. I don't know why she's keeping secrets from him. Like, sure, you can catch up, but also maybe just tell him what's up.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, we'll find out more about that in episode 7. Speaking of Sabine's journey to find him, she did encounter some bandits and had a fight with them. I really liked the way that fight looked.
Oh, that was really well choreographed. Yeah,
I've been giving Sabine a lot of grief when it comes to fighting in this series so far, and I want to give some praise because I thought that was a really good fight, and I thought that like she looked really good in that fight. And you could even tell, like, even with the lightsaber, she was still kind of a little bit wobbly. Like, she was not, fluid with it. Which fits for her character. She's not supposed to be. But she used her Mandalorian, her blaster, I think one of her shock things or whatever she used. And, like, she used it, and then she was like, oh, I have a lightsaber. I can probably use it here, too. And she uses that to, fend them off at the end there.
I like how they I like another... I was worried when they did it again, but I liked another force fake out.
I know, and that was the thing too. Is I was like, oh, I loved episode 5 so far. This episode's been really good. Don't crush this by having that force fake out or having the force thing, and then it was a fake out. I was like, okay, good. Mm-hmm. I was like, this is probably going to be a reoccurring thing until it's not. But
like I said. I would like it. This series would be perfect if it ends with just the mug scene again, and it just twitches.
Yeah,
that's all we need.
Something small.
Yeah,
something small.
Because Sabine is not forcing. Like, I mean, I know I've talked about that before in podcasts. I probably don't need to be rehashing this. Beating the dead horse, but Sabine's not supposed to be that force sensitive. Because
her connection to the Force is very low compared to Jedi.
Because everyone in the Star Wars universe is Force sensitive to a degree. Some people are more so than others. That's where the midichlorian count comes in. There's a midichlorian count in your blood. Every living thing in the Star Wars universe has midichlorians. Just some people have more than others. So that's where that comes in. But so it's not impossible that Sabine can learn the Force. But like I said, it needs to be slow, it needs to be painful, And so far,
Mhm.
I think they've done a good job with that.
Yeah. Um, yeah, all in all, like, this episode is really good. I do, obviously have a couple questions pertaining to, different things here and there. Um, I and I'm just gonna list out a couple things here that I think that you even have on your list here that I was looking at. Um, I have a lot of questions about the Night Sisters. I have a lot of questions about Thrawn's army, and I have, like you said, I have a lot of questions about Balin Skull too. Like, I'm really curious about him. Now, the one thing about him that I am curious. So a lot of people, when the series started, were talking about how maybe Shin Hati might end up betraying Balin Skull by the end of the series. I really feel like their arc is going to be like they're not going to end on the same side they're on, and I think it's going to be a more collective thing than one breaking away from the other. I don't think that they're going to be on Thrawn's side, but I'm also curious like what
Well,
they're looking for too.
Okay, they already established that Thrawn's about to betray them. Because
But they're not really in.
Because
They're also not really on like they're not like. Thrawn's about to betray them, but they don't quite trust Thrawn either.
No,
So it's
no.
like
well, because
they're kind of ready for
they're
it too.
mercenaries. They're just in it for the money.
Yeah.
They don't really care about Thrawn's cause. But like I said,
They're also looking for something.
looking for something. Yes. Again, we don't know what that is. Like I said, could be tied to the Zhejiang Vong. I could just be, hoping. Could be
So
something.
they need to introduce that.
Yeah, could be something related to the Night Sisters. Could be something related to like ancient Jedi. Who knows? Talking about the Night Sisters though, it is interesting that this is that's another part of Star Wars we don't really know much about is the Night Sisters.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting to know to learn that they came from another galaxy. Like what?
Yeah, I always thought that, and this might be because they talked about the fact that they were some of the first people to bridge the gap. Now, in Legends, it is the Yuuzhan Vong that are the first ones to bridge the gap, correct?
I think so. Yeah.
It's one of those. Oh, but the Yuuzhan Vong is one of the ones that does, and it's one of the first ones. So I was kind of that kind of caught me off guard when they got there and they're like, oh yeah, this was the original planet of the Night Sisters. Before they went to Dathomir. So that kind of caught me off guard. I don't not like it. Like I don't have a problem with it because obviously it's not contradicting anything. I mean, it might contradict like Legends, but Legends is no longer canon, so it doesn't matter. But I am curious, like, yeah, what's I need to know more about the Night Sisters. We have a little bit to do with them in the Clone Wars, and that's about it up until more recently.
Okay. Also, one thing that is kind of interesting too is the Morgan Elsbeth. So, she's supposed to be a Night Sister in the show, even though she does not at least to me, she does not look like a Zabrak.
Mm-hmm.
So
that also brings
I don't
up
know. I don't know if that's And but then again, there's nothing really ever said in Star Wars that you have to be a Dathomirian Zabrak to be a Night Sister. There's never really things explicitly said there either. But it's also kind of interesting too to think about this too. Is what if the original Night Sisters weren't even Zabraks? It just that's they settled on Dathomir and Zabraks happen to live there too, so that's where most of them came from. I don't know. That's just kind of interesting to think about.
Well, also, we do find out it happens in Clone Wars, but we have more of it talked about in the game we talked about last week, Jedi Fallen Order. The Night Sisters, at least on Dathomir, have been wiped out.
Mm-hmm.
So, where specifically is Morgan Elsbeth from?
Mm-hmm.
Like, is being a Night Sister more just practicing dark magic within the Star Wars universe, or is it actually being a part of like, do you have to be like, does it have to be passed down, or is it more like the Jedi? It's more of kind of a religion,
Mm-hmm.
Is that the same thing for the Night Sisters? And like when she taps into this dark magic, she's able to communicate with, the other Night Sisters on this other planet over here. So then when she gets there, they know, oh, she's a Night Sister. She's, from Dathomir. She's from yada, yada, yada. Like all this stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Also, like I said, I had one of the notes on the outline I put down there. Why is Thrawn working with the Night Sisters? And I was thinking about that since I put that down there. Um, so we've already seen Thrawn. Is about to betray. He kind of already did betray Balin and Shinhati. They just don't know it yet. Um,
Mm-hmm.
what happens when he actually gets back to the main galaxy? What's gonna happen to Night Sisters? He has no use for them anymore.
Mm-hmm. You can even see his kind of like not necessarily disgust, but more like, well, this is another thing going back to the character of Thrawn. How essentially like how scared Morgan Elsbeth is when Thrawn's around. Like she's like you can tell in her face she's not as confident as she once was. She's more like a little more timid around him. So but that also like one like you said he's just a man. But like in that scenario you also see how like when he finds out that Ahsoka's alive, he grills her on it and she like quivers. It's he's the one in control here,
Mm-hmm.
and it's very obvious.
That's also an interesting point too. Like I said, so the Night Mothers on this new planet in the new galaxy are have kind of just like made an alliance with Thrawn. Where does this loyalty come from with Morgan Elsbeth, though? Why
Hmm.
is a Night Sister so concerned about the return of Grand Admiral Thrawn, and why is she so loyal to him?
Yeah, yeah. That is things like what are the Night Sisters getting out of this?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but then like you were mentioning like what's Thrawn's what's he gonna do with the Night Sisters? Because like he already shows some displeasure. He's a little displeased at times with Morgan Elsbeth,
Mm-hmm.
and like you can tell that he is, and it's like kind of one of those things where it's like I'm doing this because I'm have to right now because it's gonna accomplish my goal, but I am gonna quickly get rid of this
Also,
problem, like
we know from the fact of we know from season 3 of The Mandalorian that there are still Imperial remnants that are essentially waiting for the return of Thrawn because they don't think anyone else can lead them effectively.
mhm, yeah.
Like I
Um,
said, I don't know I don't know where the Night Sisters fit into all this.
yeah, that is an interesting thing to figure out what it all is. Um, the next thing on your list that we haven't discussed is Thrawn's army, which did have me questioning some things when I first saw that. Correct me if I'm wrong. Ezra and Thrawn were the only two on the ship alive when it blasted off, right? Or was there more soldiers that were still alive at the time?
There might have been. I think the only ones on the bridge were Thrawn and Ezra. There might have been some, at lower decks somewhere. I don't know. But
Okay.
it looks to me like, and I've heard other people mention this too. This isn't really original to me, but I just think it's interesting. The fact of like, they have all the like, a lot of them have like the red cloth wrapped around their armor, or like their armor's cracked and they have like gold fillings and stuff in places.
Hmm.
What if that entire stormtrooper army is like well, and we don't even know that Marak was brought to life from uh um Night Sister
Night
magic, but
Sisters.
that's just kind of the commonly accepted theory now. But what if that entire stormtrooper army is also like, you know Night Sister magic,
Reanimated.
reanimated Night Sisters? Yeah.
Yeah. I think that'd be cool. And that was originally what my first thought was when I saw it. I was like, okay, Night Sisters, these look like a lot of the um
And if we're
when
talking
you when you first
and if we're talking
when you
strict,
first look at them, the there's a comic where there's like some zombie, you might know the picture that I'm thinking of, but there's like some zombie clones or stormtroopers or
oh yeah,
whatever.
yeah, I've seen that.
Um so I don't know why, but there was one of the helmets when they were going over it, it made me think of that. So like they are tattered, they are beaten up. Like these are not brand new, fresh trooper, units or anything. So it did kind of make me think that there's a possibility, and I feel like that might be like, at least in that scene, how it felt like it was leaning towards like maybe me reanimated.
Mm. And like,
But
I said,
like some of the later stuff was a little different, like especially with his first in command. But I am curious to see how that all pans out.
Yeah, like I said, and it's not even out of the realm of possibility because like we've seen Night Sisters do that before. We've seen that in Fallen Order and in Clone Wars. So it's not really out of the realm of possibility. So
yeah,
and that's like I said, that's what we assume Marok was. Marok, whatever. That's what we assume he, because like they didn't really explain that either. But you have like the green mist once Ahsoka cut him or cut open his chest. So that's what we assume he was.
Yeah.
And if that was, he also talked. So Thrawn's like second in command guy might also be one. Just So
he seemed a little more civil, but I guess it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
But like what was I gonna say? I don't remember. That being said, though, about being civil, that is one thing that is interesting about Thrawn. Like, he has plans for everything, but like, he lets Sabine go because he's upholding, Baylan Skoll's word. Now, he has contingency plans for like, he's making it work to his advantage, but like, you don't really think of the bad guys being like men of their word, but Thrawn very much is, but he always uses that to his advantage, which is kind of cool. It's another like just the 4D chess that he's playing that everyone else is like playing Candyland over here, and he's playing 4D chess.
Yeah, Thrawn very much is so always one step ahead of everyone else.
Yeah. Which I'm very curious to see, just like you said, the questions that are here so far that may or may not get answered are more Night Sister origins, the army that he has, and Baylan Skoll's like more about him. I am curious because like a lot of people said that they think that Baylan Skoll was going to be killed by the end of this series. I feel like that's still a possibility, but I feel like as the series has gone on, it seems like a less and less possibility because they're building his character up more and more.
I feel like
I'm curious to see how they do with that.
Okay, if not immediately here, like in the show, it probably will happen like early on if the character's still around early on in Heir to the Empire, because obviously, what was the actor's name?
Ray Stevenson.
Ray Stevenson obviously passed away. So if they don't kill the character off in the show, like I said, he's either going to be killed off early on in Heir to the Empire, or might not even come back in Heir to the Empire.
Yeah. Okay, here's the thing. I'd like to know more about this character. For the sake of the character, I kind of hope that they do kill him off, because then they won't have to deal with anything going forward. But, I'm also like, I really would like to know more about this character and see more from this character.
What I'd like to see them do, kind of like, this isn't really a prediction, this is just kind of what I would like to see, because obviously, they can't really use this character much after this. If they do, like get permission from the family and stuff to use CGI to bring him back, that's going to be really expensive. They can't really do much after the show. So I think there's a very real possibility he's going to die either at the end of this or the beginning of Heir to the Empire. What I would like to see though is season 2 of Tales of the Jedi, if they go into some of his Clone Wars stuff.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking, is like you could do more of like tell us more about what he did during the Clone Wars, either in an animated show or live action, because you could recast him as a younger actor.
True.
But either way, I'd love to see more from this character.
I feel like that would be a great thing to use for like Tales of the Jedi season 2 is bring in characters.
Tales of the Jedi would be a great place for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't really have a whole lot because I had so much praise, or I loved both of the last 2 episodes. I didn't really have much to rant about, which made my aspect of talking about this a lot shorter. Do you have anything else to say about these last couple episodes? I mean, obviously we haven't really touched too much on the fact that Ezra came back, but he comes back at the end, so that probably will come back.
We'll talk more about that next week. Episodes, I don't know what that was, but
I don't know what that was either. I got a dog, I guess, coming into the house. Maybe, I don't know.
Jumped into the door.
Sarah's coming in.
Okay.
We are still recording, so. But go ahead, come on in, hon. We're about to wrap it up.
Yeah. Anyway, actually, I don't really have anything else to say about Ezra, but I think casting was good on Ezra, though. Again, not really.
I did like.
Not really a whole lot to be able to tell from that, but I did like. I feel like what little we got, he was Ezra. I also like the fact that you remembered to get the scars and stuff right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It looked good.
But yeah. Anyway, I feel like we'll have more to say on Ezra next episode once we actually get to see him. And presumably get to see him interact more with Sabine and Ahsoka.
I will say, I am curious about this. So, we saw some wolves in a shot.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, the hinting at Kanan, I'm curious as to what aspect he plays in the show, because there is slight hinting here and there for different things, and that was one thing that stood out with me, the wolves in that one shot there.
That is actually a good point, because I thought, I saw that, I'm like, okay, that's important, because obviously Rebels played a lot into the like natural side of the Force, and the wolves were a big thing, and obviously, especially with Kanan.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I did notice that, and I was, later on
Another question.
Later on in the episode, I was wondering if I was just like if those were supposed to be the same thing Sabine was writing. But thinking back on it, I'd have to rewatch that scene to know for sure. But thinking back on it, I think those were actual wolves, like in Rebels, not the same. Not something that Sabine was writing.
Yeah, no, they were different from what Sabine was writing.
Yeah.
In the look, I mean, obviously you're at a distance and you're kind of seeing more of the silhouette of them.
But like I said, they, from what I remember, they look like the wolves in Rebels.
Yeah. That's what I saw.
Yeah.
So if I'm remembering wrong, then we're both remembering wrong. But that's what I remember seeing. So I think that was important. I think that was. I mean, it's a landscape shot, so it's not really supposed to be seen as important because that was in there. Though I feel like that's kind of important, and I'm curious to see what aspect that might play in the rest of the series.
Yeah.
More questions, but hopefully they'll be answered next week or tomorrow for those of you who are listening to this on Monday.
Yeah, we'll talk about it next week. But yeah, for those of y'all listening, you get to hear answers tomorrow, unless you have to go to unless you have to work early. So it might be Wednesday for y'all, but
more, that'd be more what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Wednesday or Thursday or Friday or Saturday or possibly Sunday, but it'll have to be at least by Monday because we're recording at least by next Wednesday.
We're recording podcast on Thursday, so yeah.
We're switching things up, so I have more time now.
Yeah. Well, no, you actually have less time to watch the episode.
Dang it, you're right. Oh, well, I'll have to get it watched by Wednesday then. Alrighty then.
But but it's actually working out better because we're actually talking about it instead of being
on time.
Yeah. The next episode hasn't already come out. By the time this episode comes out, it'll be before episode 7 comes out, so we're still talking about it on time. So yeah. Anyway,
that's good.
I don't want to keep.
I think we're good to go.
Explaining that. This is probably going to end up being our longest episode yet, so I think we're good to go.
I'm talking for 2.5 hours, so yeah, I think it definitely will be.
Yeah. Well, okay, we're at 2:16 now, so
we've been on here for 2.5 hours. Yeah. I've been looking at you for 2.5 hours, David. I've suffered enough.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, let's go ahead and head on to an outro. Well, explorers, that's all the time we have for today.
Hope you enjoyed this week's episode.
Let us know what you thought in the comments down below, or you can DM us on Instagram at DownTheRabbitShowYC.
Make sure to tell your friends about us, and be sure to join us next week on the Trailcast.